Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Know to Grow podcast, focused on light to heavy duty vehicles. Today, I have on Stacy Connor with Equipment Experts out of Lakewood, Washington, just south of Tacoma. Really looking forward to having her on. She's an innovator in the industry. Let's go ahead and hop in. Stacy, thank you so much for joining today. I think today we're going to talk about your goals to scale geographically, operationally, intellectual expansion through your 16-week training program for employees. As of today, August 19th, you actually just got the 2025 most influential companies to watch via BizTech magazine. So congrats there. So let's go ahead and hop into it. Maybe give us a little bit about your background and the company, and then we'll jump into some of the growth strategy discussion.
Okay. First of all, thank you for having us. The company is completely a team that works together to make things happen. So, really appreciate that recognition that the team is getting as we work through some things, and that's the same behind that award. It's the team that's pulling together. So, you wanted to hear about what we're trying to do to grow and the different things that we're putting in place. What we really want to grow first is our team. We want to grow their skills, their capability, their seasoning and maturity, and their ability to make decisions. And that's every level of every area of the company, but especially my leadership team. And we one of the experiences we even had just this morning is being a leader doesn't mean that you're always liked. It doesn't mean that you always choose the thing that's going to make everybody like you. You choose the thing that's the hard decision that other people are choosing not to take responsibility for. And when you do that decision, you get something better than being liked, and that's being respected. And that's what our team has had to make some very difficult decisions over the last couple of weeks. And I wanted them to recognize that while sometimes these decisions are really hard to make and they're difficult, the respect that you build for doing the right thing for everybody is much better than being liked by everybody. We all want to be liked. We all want to, be one of the buddies and stuff. But sometimes being in those leadership roles means that you make the decision that nobody else wants to make.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
So that
That's helpful. Take us a step back. For folks that maybe don't live in the area like myself in South Carolina, tell us a little bit about Equipment Experts. I believe your husband started it. Now he's fully retired. You took over the business in 2021. I think he started as a one man show. Tell us a little bit about then to now and where you are.
That was such a journey, and we started relatively late as entrepreneurs. We were 38, almost 40, both of us, when this whole thing happened. And he had been a mechanic since the time he was 16. He had lived on his own, bought a house as a senior in high school, and worked full time during that time frame. So he's always been a hard worker, very motivated, and a driven personality. And we had built a family together. We were having our third child, and I was in the middle of a C-section, like literally that day having a C-section when somebody dropped some concrete on his foot. And so his foot was broken, and he had to sit for 2 weeks for the swelling to go down before the surgery, half the surgery, and then, heal up. And then the day, 6 weeks later, when he went back to work, the day he went back, the union, it union labor, for mechanics is almost like it's almost like temp labor, and so they let him go that day. So we had to figure out what we were going to do with our family, everything that was going on, and so we decided to go out on. He went decided to go out on his own, and he worked super hard. He worked 16 hours a day, 3 years in a row. Pretty much 3 years solidly, except being home for family events, birthdays, and things like that. He was pretty much working. So it was really hard, and we didn't know anything. Neither one of us had ever managed people. Maybe one or two people, but certainly not a team, and certainly not in the environments that we have now. So we had to learn, one, what was a business, what's a financial, which we never, how to file, how to collect, how to set up accounts receivable, all of that, which neither one of us knew how to do. So it truly was, we figured it out as we went along.
That's excellent. How many folks do you have working for you now?
35.
Wow. Okay, that's a little bit more than I thought. So is that 35? I think I saw you have 15 mobile service mechanics. Yes.
That's about right for the mobile. We have about 20 techs. About 30% are shop based, and the rest are in the field.
Mhm.
We do have a couple of flex ones, but we also have, admin, front office, parts people, salespeople, all of that to keep all of them, fed with work.
Yeah.
So yeah, we have quite a team.
So you have some pretty good middle management between you and the laborers and the sales folks.
Yes, my daughter started working here when she was about 16,
Yeah.
and she's essentially been virtually in every position other than sales and marketing. So uh, she did data entry, she did front office, she did parts, she did office manager, and now she's the general manager. And so she runs the operational element and all the mechanics. And honestly, the very first mechanic that she ever hired is named Joe about 7, 8 years ago. They're now married and working. They're going to have a new baby in about 2 weeks.
Wow, that's great. Well,
Yeah.
kudos to them. That's very exciting. You know, getting middle management, I can just imagine it if I started a business is challenging. And I also see it, for my clients and folks that I talk with, establishing middle management where you kind of step out of the day to day is very tough. One, because your financials take a hit, you have to pay them. Maybe you're not quite at the revenue level where you can support them. Tell us a little bit about how you manage that process to find and get good middle management and get to that level where you can kind of take a step back and guide it at a strategic level.
It's very interesting that you bring that up because that's a thing that never ends. It's about the people. It's about the people that you have around you. And we didn't, like I said, we hadn't managed people at all, so we didn't understand the intricacies and the different kinds of people that can work for you.
Yeah.
You can I mean, you can get people there that just want to do the job for 8 hours. You can get people there that really want to, progress and learn and move and be a part of something. And then you get some people in that, can be covertly hostile that will show you one face and then show the people that work for them a completely different face. And you will not have that transparency.
Mhm.
Um, and we've all experienced it at different workplaces. And I think that's the most dangerous thing that can happen to a business. But also going into a business, it's the thing that you're not looking out for because it's very, very subtle. You're looking out for sales, you're looking out for customers, and you're looking out for different employees and that everybody's happy. Well, if you're not getting that transparency passed through to you, then you're managing with false information and false data. You have to be able to figure out a way to figure out who those people are and and establish a culture where that kind of behavior doesn't thrive. And when you get there, it's a completely different animal in a different place where you can trust the people that are there and you step back. Um, but if you step back too early, then you end up being in a place where you can damage your company, your employees, what's going on, and you end up having to rebuild from scratch. And
Yeah.
I've been there. I mean, it's happened 2 or 3 times to us, but we've gotten better and better, to figure out what's going on, and now our culture just doesn't sustain that any of that kind of behavior.
That's excellent. We'll get into culture here and some KPIs in a minute. Taking a step back to COVID 2020, your husband retires in 2021. A lot going on between those years. Obviously, it came with its challenges for you, if I had to guess. Uh, Talk about where the business was. Let's say 2019. I know you had some lofty growth ambitions.
Yeah,
COVID hits.
we
Talk-
had huge growth ambitions. Sorry, I didn't mean to. We really wanted to grow. We wanted to put several locations out. We wanted to do a few different things. And then 2020 hit. And we were growing at that point, just normally how a normal person would run a business, knowing what we knew. We
Yeah,
knew that there was a lot we didn't know, but we just didn't realize how much we didn't know at that time. Then 2020 came along, and honestly, at that time, I also opened a diesel school in March of 2020 to help build techs. That was kind of our major concern in 2019 and stuff as we built techs. But I opened a diesel school where we were training people that worked really hard to be technicians to funnel them into the field. Turns out 2020 is not a good time to open a school, but it went really well for that first year. So that was one of the things that we were doing. But also, what we were concerned with is, the financial impact. Nobody knew how long we would stay shut down. We didn't know, money would go quickly if you weren't making any money and you still had to pay all your regular bills and subscriptions and all of those things that were going on. Didn't know if people were going to be taking sick leave or vacation and having to pay that out and not having the income coming in. So we
Mhm.
worked really hard to find solutions, and we luckily found a really good one, which was here in our state. There's a thing called work source, which means that you can lay people off when business is slow, and they get the difference on unemployment. So let's say you could only use them for 20 hours, they would get 50% of the unemployment that they would get, and also be able to keep all of their benefits until you were able to bring them back on full time. So what happened during that time, we put every person in our company on that, in that process, including myself and Greg, because we didn't and know what was going on. And this happened a few weeks prior to COVID.
Mhm.
So when, we'd actually never shut down during the whole time. There was a core of us that were here taking care of people and customers and things going on. So we kept open, we kept, working and building business during that time frame. But when it was slow, or when as we were figuring out those first couple of months, we could lay people off. They got unemployment, kept their sick leave, kept all of their benefits. And in addition, during COVID, they did that extra $600 payment, and that they
Yeah.
got even if they only had $1. So they could work almost 38 hours, get paid for $25, get the extra $600. Our team, we had no one quit during that particular time period during when that COVID was really harsh, and we're able to take care of everyone.
That's excellent. Um, Going back to the diesel school, did you guys write the curriculum? Did you outsource it? How did you think about that?
So I was in partnership with a company that had the curriculum and had the financing. And so we provided the location, the instructor, and the tooling and the trucks.
Yep.
So I rented a place next door, a one bay shop. And again, it was during COVID. We had a classroom, and then we were going to have a bay that we would work in. Well, what we ended up doing, which again was for the best, you can find opportunities in every situation. We moved our classroom into the bay. So everybody would have their own table, enough space. But when you're teaching somebody something, having that engine on the table in front of you while you're learning the theory, so you can touch it, turn it over, play with it while you're learning it, is actually incredibly helpful. So having that truck in the middle of the classroom with a TV on the wall as we were doing our instructing was incredibly helpful, because they get up and go over and look at the truck and follow along with the lesson and figure things out. So you had a nice combination of theory and practical that
Yep.
overlapped. And most mechanics are not necessarily, they don't love theory. They don't like sitting down and reading a book. They like working with their hands, and they're very motion intelligent,
Mhm.
space intelligent. And when they can put their hands on it and learn the theory at the same time, it really locks in.
Yeah, excellent. How many employees did you have in 2019-ish before COVID came?
Maybe 24,
Okay.
roughly. I'd have to go back and look, but I'm guessing at 24.
Okay. So you have 35 now. You grow maybe at 11 or so. The business was started in 2004. What do you think has been the biggest growth inflection point from starting until now? Or maybe one decision that you made that, you wish you would have made earlier?
Well, for me, it was understanding words that people had bandied about for a long time, and not really understanding what truly implementing them meant. And those are things like values and culture and all of that, because for us, once we understood what it truly meant, it was a complete shift in our company, which has led to the best places to work, type of things. And it's all because of that. And we got a mentor at that time in 20. We signed up in 2019. We started working with them in 2020, and so they helped and gave us good guidance through a lot of things. And I still communicate with them to this day. But I mean, and again, people say it all the time. Being around people that are doing what you wanted to do and having them teach you that, because we were craving that information, but at our level we couldn't find it. So we had to go find it elsewhere, and once we found it, it kind of opened up a lot.
Yeah. So did they help you get into mobile as well? And how did you think about that?
No, actually, my husband was a mobile mechanic his entire life. He actually never really worked in a shop.
Yeah.
And so when he went out, he was in a truck. He didn't have a shop for the first few years. And so our mindset as we've built the company has been mobily focused on how to do it right versus being a shop and bolting on mobile. Mobile's much more complex than running a shop. A shop is rough,
Mhm.
but bolting on mobile to that, when you try to do it like a shop, it just, there's too much complexity to it. You have to really understand the nuances of mobile and then build the shop on it.
Yeah. Obviously there's risk associated with mobile. There's headache associated with it. If I had to guess, it's obviously a big portion of your revenue. Do you plan to grow that unit faster than, in shop, or how do you think about that? Slower
To
or
be
both at the same time?
it to be honest, it's where the opportunity presents. I don't want to have a preconceived notion that I'm going to put in 10 more mobile mechanics, or we'll build a shop up in, 30 miles away.
Mhm.
It's more, does the opportunity of a shop happen, then we can build that, or do I have four really good techs that walk in the door and we have to go build the business locally? So
Yeah.
it's kind of back and forth on that, where the opportunity is, because the technicians are the especially the mobile technicians are, they're a different breed. They have to have a higher skill set than a shop technician, or
Mhm.
not a higher, but a different set than a shop technician would have.
Mhm.
So you have to get exactly the right people in the right seat for them to be successful and everybody else to be able to support them.
Yeah. So you're doing or you offer a 16-week training program to new employees.
Yep.
You know, how much of that is you molding the employee versus just finding a good employee?
Well, most good employees are going to want that leadership training, because
Mhm.
it's not just leadership training for the company. And again, this is based on what our consultants taught us, which is very good. It's me leadership, learning to lead yourself, to do the things that you don't really want to do, and getting the skill set that you need to do the things that you do want to do. And then we leadership. When you're doing me leadership, you have to be respectable. You have to make the good decisions. You can't take the easy way out, which is like at the beginning of our conversation, you got to do the tough stuff. You've got to be respectable. And then you have people who look up to you. You've got to me lead. You've got to do the right thing. You got to choose to do the right thing no matter what. And then it goes to we leadership. Then you start training in that team. So for example, I focus on the people who are performing very well, and I want to pour what I can give people into them, because they're going to absorb it, they're going to take it, and then they're going to use it and they're going to amplify. But if you take that same amount of time to somebody who really doesn't want to be there, or is just wants to fly under the radar, or really doesn't want to grow themselves, you're pouring a lot of time and energy into someone that isn't going to use the time and energy that you have. So you for me, what I want to focus on are the people that are really the top level people,
Yeah.
and then they in turn work with their teams and they end up doing the same kind of thing. So you're growing your best people, you're not ignoring them, which can happen, which we absolutely did. We focused on the people who were the poor performers, put all our time and energy into that, and the top performers sometimes get ignored, and you don't want to do that. You want to give them all of your focused attention.
Yeah. I mean, you want to focus on, the best way to keep your customers happy and quite frankly, make as much money as possible at the same time.
Mhm.
Uh, as far as, the business consultant goes, explain to the listener, what this business consultant did for you, what areas of the business that they understood and knew, operations, finance, uh, sales channels, etc.
We actually did 2 different consultants, and one was way back in the beginning in, like, 2010, and that's when we didn't know how to run a business, we didn't know how to run a shop, and we found a consultant at that point. that helped us grow 5 times. We went from, at the time, Greg and I were like, I don't know, $500,000. And then we went to a few $1,000,000 at that point. But that was when, like what you were talking about earlier, the ability to make the decision and take the risk to hire someone else, like a service advisor, your very first service advisor, your very first parts person, because there's so much complexity into that. It's letting go of talking to the customers all the time and having that relationship. What if they say the wrong thing? What if they sell the wrong thing? What if they promise something wrong? Parts. What if they don't know how to do parts like I do? And you have to get over that in your head to start building that. And once you do 1, 2, 3 employees and you get that figured out, but again, if you've never managed people, which a lot of times mechanics have not. If you've never managed a ton of people, you're learning that from scratch, and it's like a dual dose. You're trying to figure out how to run a business, and you're trying to run people. So we worked with that group for quite a bit of time, but we got to a point where okay, we learned all of this. Now we want the next level, and that wasn't there. And that's one of the points I wanted to make for your listeners is we all kind of get loyal. We want to stay with this consultant or that consultant, or we trust them or like them. But the answer with consultants is as long as you're getting an increase in revenue or an increase in something, stay with them. But the minute that stops, that's when you for your own good need to jet. And I've made this mistake a couple of times to stay longer than I should have for my company because I liked them or I had created a relationship. But at the end of the day, if the numbers aren't changing or the KPIs somewhere are not improving, then it's time to move on. The second consulting group that we worked with was in 2019. We signed up with them and in 2020, and they taught us the level. They weren't much into shops, but they were into business.
Yeah.
And so they taught us all of that, like, um, information that much, hundreds of $1 million companies, they have access to, they have the information on, and taught us about all of that so that we could see the intricacies of the business and the culture and how to hire. If we've only hired 25 people and these people have hired 2,000 people, they're going to have a much better system on how to hire, train, and keep those people. And that's what we absorbed.
Yeah. Excellent. Let's dive into culture a bit and retaining and growing your talent. Obviously, it's a very critical piece of your business for you. You know, growing and retaining that talent is tough. Let's talk about that a little bit. How
Okay.
you through that.
Well, the idea behind the school was that we'd put a bunch of mechanics through and then we'd hire them. To be honest, there was about a 3-year gap between that because the people I was training was just basically to be able to change oil on a truck and go into an apprenticeship program that was established by a much larger company. And that's what happened with those guys is they all went into these other training programs, and then about 3 4 years later when they were looking for a different job, they ended up coming back to us. Um, several of them, and worked through that and then started training those guys. Again, what we do is not so focused. We're trucks, forklifts, heavy equipment, generators. So it's not like a truck shop where they're working only on Cummins and you get to know that really well. It's all of the things. And so we have kind of a special breed. We bring them in. And with the culture that we've done, it's a team environment. So they have 15 people or 20 people that they can call. Hey, I'm running into this. What do I need to know? And then using technology to the fullest advantage of FaceTime, all of that kind of stuff. Okay, this is what I'm seeing. What do you think? And then knowing who has what specialty. We have one gentleman that's been here like 10 years, and his specialty is forklifts. And so if somebody's struggling with something here, we can call Jim. Or if somebody has a hydraulic issue, we've got a number of trained hydraulic people. They call those guys. And the team works together and communicates with each other and the leadership team on how to manage all of that.
Good. Now, besides revenue and maybe looking at your profit margin, what type of KPIs are you also looking at to help understand if the business is performing where you want it to be?
We measure everything. Every person in our organization is tied to a bonus structure.
Okay.
And that bonus structure waterfalls from my KPIs all the way down by department, down to our parts runner, and our like accounts receivable people. All of them and we go over those KPIs as an office. We don't necessarily pull the mechanics into that, but we pull in the office and we go through all those KPIs for everybody in 20 minutes once a week, so that everybody knows where we're at and what we need to focus on. So a couple of the KPIs that are interesting are, for me personally, I believe the speed of the particle through the business equals profitability. So from the time that you get the phone call to the time you've got a closed, completed work order and that repair order is done, I want to know that time.
Mhm.
And we haven't figured out a way to do it yet, but I want a KPI on repaired correctly first time. So you have a KPI on it's completed and it's done right versus completed, oh, okay, we have a loose filter, we need to go back out, or something along those lines. Or it was check engine light, we got one piece done, but now, we want that diagnostic to be done and complete. We also look at things like revenue per tech and things like that. How much is each tech making? What are their part sales and things like that? But we have probably 40 KPIs that we review on a weekly basis.
That's a lot. And how did you guys determine which KPIs to track?
To be honest, we started like with 5. And then as we ran into things in our environment and, oh, it would be great to know this. Oh, it would be great to know that. Okay, this would be good to measure. We would add those to the KPIs and develop a way that we could get that information. And so it's built over the last, I'm going to say, the last 15 years. We started out seriously with just like 5, and
Mhm.
we just continued to add more as the company grew and different people had different information. I mean, like, one is inventory turn, you
Yeah.
know, in a shop, you don't necessarily think about inventory, you just think about parts as parts. But we made the mistake of trying to have a lot of parts, and now we're winnowing that down, and we want that inventory to come down significantly. And that's like a several year project to bring all that down because you have dead stock.
Yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
You don't want to waste your space either. Drop shipping's a big thing now, obviously. Um, do you have technology or systems automating some of these KPIs? I
Mhm.
guess what percentage are manually recorded versus those that are automated?
Almost all of ours are manually done, but we've created like um like spreadsheets that you put the numbers in and it automatically calculates.
Mhm.
So it can be done in a short period of time. It's usually, I don't know, maybe a couple hours for one person a week to do. But it took time to develop that. There were times I remember spending all morning on developing the KPIs. But
Yeah.
once it's tied to a compensation structure, then you can't miss it. It has to be done. And it becomes a lot of times in business, depending on the personalities that are there, you do stuff and it makes sense and you do it. But if you tell somebody else to do it, they're not going to understand the why behind it. Well, now that it's tied to compensation, it can't be missed. And nobody misses their KPIs now.
Has the data behind the KPIs revealed anything about the business that was underperforming that you would not have previously been able to decipher?
Hmm. Absolutely. What is very interesting, I mean, we can look at ourselves in the mirror all day long and be overly critical and do all that. What's very interesting is when you get into a room with other business owners and in a safe place, people that you're friendly with and all of that, and you brainstorm and you come up with the KPIs that make sense for all of you, then you know that you've created true data.
Yeah.
And that's what's happened for us. We've been in rooms with some really smart people that have shops all across the country, and we sat down and boiled down what are the KPIs that make sense. And because it's consistent from shop to shop to shop, those are the KPIs that are true and that we all measure by and share. Somebody's doing really well across the country. Okay, what are they doing? Because you can take yourself to this level, but what you want to do is look across the country and, okay, this guy's doing this much better. Why? What do I got to do to get to that level? Well, I have one friend that keeps doing that, and every time I go back and double check the numbers, he's up again. And so then we have to go up again. And so that kind of that those KPIs and those measurements, once you figure out what's the truth that is the true KPI to measure for effectiveness or for measurement, then you've got something you can build a foundation on. Sometimes if you don't know, you're just measuring things willy-nilly. But there are a lot of things. It's sales per technician tells you a lot about that technician. How much a percentage of what they're selling is parts tells you if they're a parts changer, or if they diagnose, or if they're not doing a complete repair. So, there's a lot you can tell between the different KPIs and the comparison between different ones.
Yeah, very helpful. I know we're coming up on 30 minutes, but I have a few more questions to ask you. One, let's just talk about the industry in general. We're approaching hopefully a rate cut here in September. Yeah, that should spur an increase in GDP. Where do you see the industry in terms of fleet repair, Q3 and Q4, the rest of the year, and then in 2026?
I think there's a baseline level of of infrastructure needs that happen. There's baseline level of transportation, of trucks, of construction, of different things that happen. And as long as you do a good job, and depending on the size of your organization, those shifts and will affect people. Um, but if you're small enough, depending on what size you are, you create your own environment. You sell enough to create your own environment, or you provide enough customer service that people don't go away. So I believe that we create the environment that we want to be, and that includes the environment that we have for our technicians and for our customers. And we just have to take full responsibility for the environment that we're in. So overall, I think things are going to get better, because I think there's a lot of investment that's going to be going into the US in the military bases, in the infrastructure, in the manufacturing. All of that requires infrastructure and building and construction drives our economy. The more we can get construction done here locally, and we bring the interest rates down to where the houses become affordable, then you get a much stronger economy. I think we're going to be fine. I think we've got to look for the true facts and the true data in all of the information that's out there, and find what we want to build our own foundation on.
Excellent. And then let's leave the audience with this. I think culture and KPIs are probably the two most important things for you in terms of growing your business. How should, day one, what should these folks focus on, and how do you actually implement it?
So for us, like, to go back to what I said before, there are some things that I didn't take seriously. The words like values and a mission statement and culture, I kind of thought they were buzzwords.
Yeah.
And yeah, yeah, okay, right, yeah, we built our values, da 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 da. But once we stopped with that and went, no, truly, this is how we want to make our decisions. And we're giving, so for us, we have core values. There's safety, integrity, communication, alignment, accountability, and results. And for me, one of the most important ones in there is the subtle one, which is alignment. That's how you're going to find the people that are not being truthful to your face, because they will show that they're not in alignment. Their
Yeah.
actions will show that. And that's how you can define that. So when we started hiring people, we're like, these are our core values. How would you display these? How would you notice if they were not in? The people walking in the door are in agreement, in alignment with those core values before they even walk in. If they don't answer those correctly, or integrity to them means, when people are watching me, I do the right thing, not when people are not watching me, do the right thing, or they come up with a story that's not within integrity as we view it, then we
Hmm.
know that that's not the right person, and no matter how talented they are, they're not on our team.
Yeah.
So we really gatekeep that. When somebody is having an issue, we had a gentleman yesterday that struggled, and he made a mistake that we're going to have to pay for. But this particular person displays the values all the time, and when it came to, hey, did this happen, what do you think? No, it was me. I was the last person that touched that. I did that. I'm really sorry. What do I need to do to move forward? That's accountability, that's alignment, that
Right.
is integrity. So when somebody is displaying all of those 90% of the time, or 95% of the time, and they make a mistake, that's simply a mistake.
Hmm.
When you have someone who is not within integrity, they are not in alignment, they don't have accountability, and they don't have results, it's everybody knows, it's very clear what that measurement. I've caught my people walking around going, well, that's not really results. And so when they live that, that means what Greg and I have built will live the way we want it to go.
Sure. Yeah. And you want them to be an asset to the business at the end of the day.
Well, and it's bumpers. They know that if they act within these behaviors and they hit the KPIs that have been laid out for them, they're going to both make money and they have the bumpers of what is acceptable and they'll do fine here.
Mhm. And what's and then, KPIs, I have two clients in the space that, they don't track KPIs at all. But, if they were to get into it, what would you recommend? What's the easiest way to, kind of figure out your top 5 or 10 KPIs and then start tracking them? How can somebody think through that?
The first one would be, revenue, of course, making sure that you understand your gross profit and what that gross profit is, understanding what your operational costs are so that you know if you're making a net at the bottom, and
Mhm.
then tech efficiency. So you've got the big ones, which are business ones. To stay afloat, you got to know these. But then to manage what you're doing, there's another level, and that has to do with technicians and what they're doing, what they're not doing. And so you've got technician efficiency, and you've got parts, and what your margins are on both of those.
Excellent. Stacy, Connor, equipment experts, thank you so much for joining us today. I think that was very insightful. Thanks again for your time.
Absolutely, and thank you again for having us.